Hello, welcome. Welcome to the Science Mind Archives Wise Sage Interviews. I am Reverend Kathy Mastriani, Executive Director of the Science Mind Archives and Library Foundation, and I have the great honor and opportunity to interview the founder of the Science and Mind Archives, Reverend Dr. Marilyn Leo. And so we could share her history and wisdom with the Science and Mind community and the world at large. And the interesting thing is, many people know that she's the founder of the archives, but her history within our movement is very vast. She has done so much for our whole movement. And so I'm really honored and excited to be doing this interview with her today. So thank you, Dr. Marilyn, for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So I would like to start off by tell us about your early life and where and when you were born, the origins of your family, any siblings you had, and your religious background.
Alrighty. I was born in Los Angeles, California in February 28th, 1935. And my mother and father, they rented a house in Culver City, and so I was raised in West Los Angeles. And the early years, when I was about 2, my mother divorced the handsome father of Raymond Hartsook, that was his name, and I lived with my mother and my sister, who was a newborn, in my grandmother's, with my grandmother and her grandmother and grandfather. And first it was with my mother's mother or family, and then for a long period it was with my father's family. And so I was raised with her until my mother married Reginald Armour, and that time was they married on April 25th, Easter Sunday, 1943. And so then we stayed there with my grandmother until the end of the school year, and then moved in with Mom and Reg. I was at an age where I refused to call him Daddy or my father or anything else. I was very rebellious about the whole thing. My sister just fell right into line, and she didn't mind. She'd call him anything, because she didn't remember her dad, which I did, and I did. So anyway, so we lived with my grandma and grandpa, and they were the part of the very, very prominent in the Methodist Church, Trinity Methodist down in Los Angeles, Flower and Pico and Flower, or someplace right in that area. And so I went with them every Sunday morning, and Grandma was head of the babies, the cradle in the cradles, and then just the little toddlers. And I would read to them and help in the Sunday school. And my grandfather was he sang in the choir and also solos. Cousin of mine, they had one of their daughter, Dorothy May. She later was married and had 3 children, and lived right next door to my grandma and grandpa. And so we knew them very well. And that cousin, Brenda, her name is Brenda Smith, she just finished a book. The two of us, offered information and pictures and things about our grandfather. And so that was called A Legacy of Love, about a grandma and grandpa. But back to me. So when I was 8 and Dorothy was 6, or just short of 6, we moved in with Reg and Mom. And Reg had a son who was 12 years old. And any pictures you see of their the wedding was just I think it was Jerome Holmes who married them. When you see pictures of that day, you'll see the three kids, and Reggie was 12, I was 8, and Dorothy was 6, or almost 6, within 2 weeks. That's why I say almost. So that was the beginning of a very completely different family relationship. I had always been the oldest of all of the cousins, and my mother was one of nine children. So I had lots and lots of cousins, and we all still meet every 2 years. Those first cousins, and now the second and third generation are also joining us sometimes, but they're not as close as the first cousins are. So anyway, I guess I had a fairly normal childhood, other than people want to ooh and ah because Reg lived next to Ernest Holmes, and actually right behind our house, because our house faced Mentone Place at the time. It's changed names to Chevy Vista Place, but the back of it connected to Ernest Holmes' property, and the face of Ernest Holmes' property faced down the hill onto National Boulevard. Anyway, so we had a very close relationship with Ernest and Hazel, because Reg had known Ernest since he was 12 years old. And so they had kept that relationship, and they had a piece of property right next to us, and he gave that to us so that we could have a garden. So we had roses, and we had a vegetable garden during World War II, and we took so we grew our own vegetables, and there's all kinds of stories that took place during that time, and getting frozen meat lockers and food stamps and gasoline stamps and things like that. I won't go into that because they're all in one of my books, and in his company, in that book, tells all about those kinds of personal stories that we had with Ernest and Hazel. So where shall I jump to? Went to Hamilton High School. I went to Altaloma School, first grade, I guess, first and second grade, kindergarten through second grade. And third grade, I was at Palms Grammar School. And then I went directly to Hamilton High School and graduated in 1952. It wasn't until the 70s, about 75, I think, that I started taking classwork. Reg always kept encouraging me to take science of mind classes. And so finally I did, with a scholarship. And then I got married to my fourth of fifth opportunities to be married. Let's put it that way. Okay. So between the 50s and the 70s, I had 4 opportunities to try and make a go of marriage, which just didn't work out. I mean, anyway, it didn't work out, and I'm not going to go into all that. They were all very short relationships. But then in 1981, well, actually in 55, I had met Richard at a public dance at a hotel close to the Institute. And while we were dancing, conversation came up, and he told me that he was in charge of the youth of the Science of Mind, or Church of Religious Science. And so I just let him talk on. And finally, he discovered that I was related also. So that was kind of interesting. And we dated for a short time, but then we both went our own ways. And then in 1980, I was going to go up to the ranch that we always went to in summer to visit with my cousins that lived there, and they had a big ranch on the Russian River in Alexander Valley. And so anyway, this particular Thanksgiving, I was going to go up there, and my mother always kept me knowledgeable about what Richard was doing because she thought he was cream of the crop. So she'd always tell me, oh, he got married. Oh, no, he's divorced now. Oh, he's now a minister, and he's at such and such church. And so he was at Santa Rosa Church at the time. And so I wrote to him and told him I was coming up, and if he was available, he'd come over and have Thanksgiving dinner with us. And at the time, he already had plans, but he came over after dinner, and we got back together. And then in March, Friday the 13th, 81, we got married. And that lasted 20 years until he passed on. Those 20 years, though, now that was really the beginning of a life that was extremely different from what I had been living, and for the better. I'll just say that, for the better. And so I moved up to Santa Rosa, and the two of us also had a desire to have a mini Asilomar. Asilomar is the camp for the sand dunes in Pacific Grove, California. And so we thought that would be wonderful. So we started looking at properties in California. Anything that was even close to what we could afford was hills like this, and it's just impossible to have any flat land to build a house or anything else on. So we found a place up in the hills above Central Point, which is between Medford and Grants Pass. And it was like, we just knew when we went on the property, we knew that was it. That was the place. And so we developed that, built our own house, built another building first of that was where the garden was going to be. And we built, we had fruit trees and vegetable garden. And excuse me, I have a dog that insists that he wants to be on my lap or something. So I will try to pacify him. Anyway, so we built that building, and it was a miniature of what our house was going to be. When we lived in Santa Rosa, we went to the Santa Rosa Community College, and learned about building solar, living in solar, and natural solar, not the panels that they have these days, but just natural solar. And so we were preparing, and so then we found the property, and Richard resigned from the Santa Rosa Church, where he was the minister, and we moved to Oregon and built a house. We rented a house for 1 year, and everything developed within that 1 year. And we moved into a house that there were no kitchen countertops, and there are just lots of things that weren't complete yet, but we were able to move in and live there. And the first day that we were there, when we were moving in, it poured rain. It was ready for winter. It was October, and it was ready for winter. So that was our welcome to our new home.
And what year was this?
That was 82. We were married in 81, and it was a year later. I think it was May of 82 when we moved up there, I believe. So anyway, we developed it and built the house and built the other building first, and that was wonderful. And then we decided that we need to see if there was anybody there that knew Science of Mind, or if there's any practitioners or anything like that. And we found a group up in the, quite along, I think it's not Prescott, it's, there's another town up on the way to Crater Lake. And there was a group of that met there once, I guess once a week. And so Richard called, and that was Frank. Can't think of his last name right now, but anyway, he had a group that were meeting, and they had told us about different people that had been around for years, and we decided that people tried to get us to go to Ashland because that is a university town, and but we decided that we would go between Grants Pass, where there was a church, and Ashland, where there was no church, but Medford was more in the center and more populated. And so we decided to start a church there. And that was in October, probably maybe that same year. I don't remember the years exactly. So we moved into our house in October. Well, and at any rate, and so we rented a room for Sundays at the Holiday Inn down in the town right by the freeway. And that first Sunday we had 100 people, and they came from, don't be fooled, they came from Medford, I mean from Santa Rosa and Santa Cruz and different places that, they knew Richard as a minister, and so they all came just in support. The next Sunday it was down to about 50 or 70, something like that. So it was big change, big difference. But those people, we had been married at the Santa Rosa Church by Robert Scott, San Jose, and he drove up to Santa Rosa to officiate, which was very, very nice. So anyway, we lived there for about 6 years, I think. And let me just say that we personally ran out of money. And so we left, and after they had chosen a new minister. But we knew that it was best to not be around with a new minister. So we moved out, and we're told about a church. We were invited actually by Lex James to come down and candidate at Antelope Valley Church. And we did that. And we also candidated at west of there. I don't even know if there's a church there anymore. I'm trying to think. The name it was by, if you know the area at all, which I guess you don't because you're not from there. Anyway, but the Antelope Valley invited Richard to be the minister, and they wanted me to be the co-minister.
That's why I was just going to ask, were you a minister at this point?
I must have been.
That's true.
No, I don't think I was a minister at this time. Oh, yes, I was a minister at that time. Because while I was in Oregon, I attended, I went through the Ernest Holmes College. Yes, I'd forgotten about that. And that's when Richard got interested in computers, because I would type my papers, and then if I'd made a mistake, of course I had to start over again on the typewriter. And so he said, we need to get you a computer, and he got all interested in computers along with Carlos Di Giovanni, who was very, very good and knew a lot about computers. And there was a lot going on at the home office about installing computers and all of that. Lots of changes going on at the time. So yes, I was a minister when we left there, and we went to the Antelope Valley Church, and Richard did Sunday services, and he had his office there. He was the main minister. I took care of the young people, And I did a Wednesday noon healing service, and I would teach classes. And also I was the chaplain. Richard never liked to go to the hospital and see people. So that was my thing. And the woman who had been the minister at that church, she had gotten herself into the chaplaincy program at the hospital there. They weren't inclined to, they were very Christian oriented, and they didn't bother to find out what we were about. And there was a lot of bad publicity about Science of Mind, with among Christian churches at the time. And maybe they're still going on, I don't know. Anyway, I enjoyed it, and I would be on duty for 24/7 for 1 week at a time, and each person would take their turn. Also, while in Antelope Valley, we started a group, an interfaith group that were more broad-minded. We included, Baha'i faith, and a rabbi from the Jewish temple, and people that were not welcome in the other interfaith group. And I became president of that at one time. And then and then I was invited to come down and to be the director of the the Ministry of Prayer at Home Office. And I changed the name back to, it had been called World Ministry of Prayer. It had been changed, taken off the world. But since we talked to people in lots of different countries, I believed that we wanted to serve the world. So I changed it back to World Ministry of Prayer.
Nice.
I was there for, I don't know, 18, 20 months, something like that. Got fired because I didn't obey what I was told to do. And there we go. But then my life really changed for the better. And so, as we know, everything works out for the better when we believe it is. So then, in order to do that, that was more than an hour's drive from where we lived. And so Richard remained as the senior minister there at Antelope Valley. And I would drive in like on Sunday night, and I got an apartment. The building had been, it was a new building that we were in, and there were apartments that were next to it. And so I got the least expensive I could get in the apartment, and then would go home on the weekends. But I was there, so there were occasions, sometimes, seldom, but there are occasions when somebody on the night shift, because we were there 24 hours a day, and the night shift couldn't show up. And so then I was close enough, I'd just walk over there and be there instead, to answer phones. And that's what we did, to answer phones. And so that was fine. And so then when I didn't do that anymore, I'm trying to remember what was next. But over the years, we had what we called vice presidents, and they were regional ministers. I think there were 4 regions in the world, and mine was number 1, which was better part, not Los Angeles County, but the rest of California and international. And so that was so I did that for a couple of years until, because everything goes in a couple of years at a time.
And what years are we up to now? When was that? Do you know about?
Well, let's see. We left Oregon in 88. Don't know. in the 90s, I guess, someplace.
Okay, cool. Oh,
Uh,
that's great.
I think 88 is when we came, no, 88 is when we came to Antelope Valley, left Oregon. One of the things, or a couple of things that happened in Oregon that I forgot to mention that I was very proud of was while we were there, besides doing chaplaincy in the Catholic hospital there, I brought together all New Thought through INTA. I expanded that for Southern California, and Southern Oregon, and got all the New Thought ministers or groups, and there's lots of them, but they're just little small groups, and brought them together. And we would drive to, we got INTA to move from Salem to Eugene. And so once a month we would go up there. That's about 2.5 hours from Medford, I guess. And we'd drive up there, have the meeting, have lunch, and then drive back to Southern Oregon. Anyway, that group, it was the year of the Hour for Peace that was begun by John Randolph Price. And I'm guessing it's around 85 and 1985. And we decided that we were going to have a group, and the only place we could find large enough was the Armory. And people said, that's a crazy place to have a peace thing. But we said, doesn't matter. Yeah, that's where we're going to have it. It was to go at 4 o'clock in the morning. We called the newspaper, and they showed up. 200 people showed up at 4 o'clock on a winter day in Medford. And it's cold and icy and black ice all over the place. Anyway, that was wonderful. And the way we did it was the New Thought ministers. We all sat on a platform kind of area. There's probably at least a half dozen, maybe more, that participated, and they would do a reading. Then we'd have a quiet time. Then the next one would do a reading and have a quiet. Anyway, I thought it was very successful, and it hit the headlines in the local paper. And so anyway, that was the first one. After that, I think lots of churches had big shows of lots of people came that first year, but I think it's more or less dwindled, or I don't know just what's going on with that now. All right, so then we moved in, and then I became very active with United Church of Religious Science, and I just seemed to be involved with lots of stuff. And Richard was, he wanted to teach at the school. That was the reason for coming back down from Oregon. He wanted to teach Emerson because he loved the teachings of Emerson. But it did not invite him to do that. And so, but now he was a minister, so he had income. And I had some income also. Help me with what you want to know, what happened. I served in lots of places. I was asked to be on the nominating committee for the, for the nominees for conventions. Let's see, what else did I do? Oh, I was part of the, I was the vice president for District 3, and then I was part of the organizational renewal project, which I'm thinking it was Reverend Kathy Ann Lewis, or else it was Margaret Stortz, but it was right between. They were the chairs. They became the chairs of the board of directors for United Church. And I think it was Kathy Ann Lewis that invited me to be a part of that renewal project. And out of that renewal project, then Kathy Hearn and Michael Beckwith and Roger Teal and several others then came together to reorganize and create a new organization. You know better than I do when we started. Oh, it was 1999, I guess, when I had started or was part of the retired ministers for United Church, and and we would meet at different places. When the convention came, we would have a day that retired ministers could meet together, and that was that was good. We enjoyed that a whole lot because we all knew each other. Richard had become the president of the United Clergy, and he was that for a couple of different times, for different periods. There are just lots of things that was going on at that time when he was president. I knew the names of every minister in the United Church, and a lot of the RSI ones too. I don't know probably half of them now, but that comes with, you know, change, and I have never haven't kept up with that. Let's see. So that was called the Wisdom Council. And also I was very active on INTA, and Dr. Tom Johnson had an INTA radio show, and he invited me a couple of times that, you know, it was kind of a interview kind of thing on the radio. And so I did that with him. While I was in Oregon, I did some, I guess they were TV, because I had to learn how to read a monitor. And so I would write what I wanted to say, but then it would be on a monitor, and I'd have to learn to read it without moving my eyes, which is, I remember that's not an easy thing to do. So so from that, I have gotten to look at people's eyes that are on the news or whatever, to see if their eyeballs are moving. What a pastime I have. Let's see here what I have that you might be interested in. Mm-hmm.
Now, I know you were doing something with global services. What was your role there?
Well, I started it.
I thought so. It was like a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I was when we were we had moved to Burbank, and you know, over the years, in the 50s, there were people in other parts of the world that in France and Germany, Israel, Saudi Arabia, different places, there were Science of Mind people, and they wanted to, and they would get together and have, you know, study groups. And anyway, Nirvana Gale was the head of I guess, the part that would have that, and he invited me to come, and he invited a couple other people, and we met for 1 year, I guess once a month. I'm just, you know, trying to remember, and this was to get acquainted with other possibilities of people in the world. And then after that first year, he said that I was to be in charge of that. And so from there, we continued to meet once a month, and more people we got to participate. Now that's about when Barbara Leger started her group in
The Ukraine.
In Ukraine. And then there was Jenny Goff, who spoke Spanish fluently. And there were practitioners or people learning about Science of Mind. In Argentina, there was one. And in Peru, there were several. And we had a Spanish-speaking minister who was, I think she was from Peru, and then she went back down there. She had been up in El Monte, I think, and then she went back down there. And we had all these practitioners, all Spanish speaking. So we were meeting in the penthouse that Bob and Bob Grabowski was there, and he had been to Russia, not Ukraine, Russia, and he was always very interested in the Russian ministries, and where we had several there, and trying to think of the woman's name because she lived out there in Lancaster, and so I knew her quite well, and she had asked me to take over some of the things that she had been doing, and so anyway, where was I? Oh, okay. I
You
lost
were
my
talking
train of
about the
thought.
different places around the world, that there was a Spanish ministry and then Russia, and how the global
Yeah, so
services came together.
well, this was the global services. I don't know what it was called at the time. I don't remember. Whatever is on that plate that person made for me after serving on that. So anyway, there were people, Rosemary, can't think of her last name, in Germany, and I got to know her quite well. France was pretty quiet by that time, but we had lots of in the early years, we had lots of people in France, and they came together through INTA and that.
And this is my favorite
So-
question, if you haven't noticed, but do you know about what time frame that was when this was coming together? It was in the
Okay,
90s.
well, we were in Burbank, so we had moved to Burbank, and Nirvana Gale was the head of the ecclesiastic group. Rodney Scott was, I guess, the administrator, COO, or whatever he was, but Nirvana Gale was in charge of ministries. Anyway, oh, I know, about Jenny Goff. She created and got together, was all decided at our meetings, that she would have at least a monthly, I think it was probably monthly, meeting with all the Spanish speaking. And I guess this must have been by phone. I don't remember what technology there was, but I think it must have been by phone, because I don't think it was Zoom. In fact, I'm sure it wasn't. And anyway, so once a month, and then they could just speak Spanish and talk amongst themselves. And so then at a Silmar one year, while this was going on, all of these practitioner students came to Silmar and brought all these presents and things, and I gave some of them to the archives, so I hope that you still have some of those little things that they brought. They were just wonderful people, and that was a very long time ago, at least 20 years ago. And also Christian Sorensen invited me to come take the train down to Encinitas and have lunch with he and Nancy Anderson, who was trying to start something with RSI, and that's Religious Science International, in a global, more of a global way. She had a completely different way of doing. RSI had a different way of doing things, and there was a woman in United that started a ministry down in Tijuana, and so some of us went down there one time. But then then it just wasn't safe anymore, and I think she got mugged and finally stopped going. But I think they have something down there now. I'm not real clear on what the present circumstances is, but that was very interesting to see what she was doing. It was either in Tijuana, or we had to go through Tijuana, so it must have been someplace just below it. Well, can you Okay. I don't know what else. I've received, some awards and things like that, which are wonderful. I've written books now. I've written, I went to the archives. I started the archives. Well, I guess I didn't get into that much, but we were part of the Wisdom Council. Once in a while would meet at the home office. And one time, this COO, Bob Gale, came to the meeting and said, there's a room with a bunch of stuff in it. And is there anybody here that would like to try to figure out what's there and maybe create some kind of an archives or something? So since Richard and I both had known Ernest and Hazel, we thought, well, we seem to be the most likely. And so we decided to go to Durango, Colorado, to a college there through Elder Hostel. And we went and spent a week creating an archives of an actual company that was there in Durango many, many years ago. So we could learn about how to do archiving. At any rate, that's how the archives got started. And that was, I believe, in '99. We had volunteers come and help us start to go through things. We ordered the correct boxes and folders and everything, and started putting papers and things into the folders. We had an interesting happening that was a Washington's birthday weekend. And we only went into town because it was about, at least maybe once a week, maybe every 10 days or so, because it was a good hour and a half to get in there. And then we would set it up, and volunteers would come and meet us there, and we would buy lunch. There was a grant given to us to get started, and by United Church. And so with that, I think Richard was paid $10 a trip, plus we could have lunch for the volunteers. And so Marilyn, well, I won't go into that. So I just figure it's $5 a person that we that we got paid for it. Anyway, Richard got very sick, and so in 2001, that's when he died. It was 2001. So it was about, he came in about, not all the time. And so anyway, this Washington's birthday weekend, I wasn't doing anything on the Monday, the holiday. So I thought, it'd be nice and quiet in there. I think I'll go in and do some work in there. And so I did. And when I arrived, there was water all over the floor, a couple inches of water. And so there's nobody else there because it was a holiday, except the guard. And he was outside someplace. And so I thought, how am I going to find a mop? And I started walking around trying to find where they kept the mops and things. Finally, I found the guard, and he didn't know. So we just went looking together. Anyway, after getting, the water off the floor, started looking at the photographs that were sopping wet. And so then the room had, I would peel it apart and just hang them someplace, all over just because they would just stick any place you put them.
Wow.
And I did that, and we saved a lot of them. But photographs don't do well when they get wet. So, but anyway, so that was an interesting coincidence. We don't believe in coincidence. Anyway, this so my first this was supposed to be all one book. And when they decided it was too big to do in one book, so I said, well, then let's begin. And this was the history that from 1927 on, and so I said, well, let's then begin, and they began with 1926 to 1959 that was Ernest, while Ernest was with us. And so then the other book is from 1960 through February of 2012. And as you can see, it's much thicker. But I went in.
Can you hold up the covers of them? So this is Chronicles of Religious Science, volumes 1 and then volumes 2.
And
yes,
there
wow.
were more.
Yeah.
And this is volume 2. And so everything is from the minutes. There's a few, I put my 2 cents worth in there when there are memories that I was there, so I knew what it had taken place. Then there you are. So then I think this is 2007, I think. I could look it up here. I wrote a book about personalized it with Ernest, about Ernest and Hazel Holmes, and interviewed many people. I think there are about 40 people I interviewed for this particular book, and it got its title because I was walking around. I hadn't titled the book yet, and I was walking around in Costco in their books, and the name just came to me just like that, in his company. And then somebody added Ernest Holmes Remembered, so that was good. But I think this was 2007. I haven't found the date on here yet. Anyway, so that this book here now is, I'm once again promoting this book because it's so wonderful. And as I read it, I don't want to put it down because it's so interesting to me. And I wrote it. I thought, gee whiz, I don't want to, I didn't want to stop and do something else. I wanted to read this. But it's very personalized, and then the interviews, I left the words that the people said. So sometimes maybe the grammar isn't quite right, or I've been told, oh, you should have edited it. No, I said I wanted the people's words to be as they said them to me. So there are many people like Frank Richelieu, and there's someplace here that tells, okay, Frank Richelieu, Shirley McAlpine, she's no longer with us on this planet. William McLuckin, Orrin Moen, Ventura Papke, Norman Vincent Peale, James, that was not in person, that was from a magazine. James Pottinger, I don't believe he's with us any longer. Dorothy Ray Prokopenko, Serge Prokopenko, Frank Richelieu. Peggy Lee, that would be from her autobiography. Richard Leo, Chris Larson, that's the son of Christian D. Larson. Clyda Hopkins, she was 103 years old when I interviewed her.
Wow.
And she's not with us anymore. So Glenn Hayden, William Hart. Anyway, a whole lot of people there. Some of them you've heard of and some you have not. Anyway, that's I love this book.
It's a wonderful book. When I first started at the archives 8 years ago, that was the first book I purchased so I could learn more about who Ernest Holmes was as a person. And you did a lovely job interviewing and putting together those stories. And so I'm sure everyone would love to read that.
Well, thank you. So I'm beginning a promotion now. I have copies of it, and so I want them sold through the archives if possible. But while we're going on with this move, probably I will send them out for the time being, and then eventually, though, then you'll be able to buy them from the archives.
So
Okay,
what,
the most recent. I'm
so
sorry.
what- you mentioned a move. What move is happening?
Oh, well, we have grown. We were in that little room, and I don't know how big it was, 10 by 10, 10 by 8. I don't, probably about 10 by 12, something like that. We went to Burbank and got a room about twice as large, but still no heat, no lights, no air conditioning. And we got there and kept got everything in order in the stacks, and in and we got an inventory of what we had, pretty much completed. And then we moved, and that's when I decided that I didn't want us to move. I didn't want the archives to move. I felt that it belonged in Southern California, and where it belonged would be where people could use it. Perhaps at one of the campuses, because now we had all these campuses around, and certainly those students would want to be there and to see all of this. So we were able to create a foundation, separate foundation from what was now called Centers for Spiritual Living. And we moved to, we found that our campus in Encinitas, which is called the San Diego campus, they had a building, needed some work to it, but that's where they were doing their classes, and they offered to rent it to us, and that we would have to, of course, upgrade it, anything, but they moved their classes to inside of their church building. And so we were there for 2 years, outgrowing that because that was filled to overflowing. We decided, well, we might as well go to Golden. Are looking for somebody to rent the space downstairs. So maybe that's the perfect place for us to go. We did. And that was 2,600 square feet at that point. So you can see that is 5, I don't know, but anyway, now, all this time later, here we are, we're so full and overflowing because there's still in papers and books and things that are coming to our attention and that are being donated into the archives. Yes, we have lots of duplicates of lots of books, and what we're really interested in is the papers. Anybody have a letter from Ernest Holmes? I wonder if there's any out there and it's not falling apart, there are things like that. So we are physically now looking for a new place to grow more. And I know that the perfect place is unfolding right now. Anyway, in the last few years, I've also wrote Mother of a Mystic. She's the mother of Ernest Holmes, and it gets a little. It talks about her and how she grew up, and her family, and she had 9 boys. Ernest was the youngest, and talks about him and shows you what kind of a background he came from, and what kind of a child and an adult he became. And I'm very happy with the book. I've just read it recently again, and I find it very interesting. She was related. Her name was Heath, was her maiden name, and her name goes way, 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 way back to the Mayflower in those early years. That's how long her family had been there. Another thing I love doing, I write for the Science Mind magazine, and I've always loved writing since I was a teenager. And then all of a sudden, I've been invited to write for them. And And so they had a project, write a letter to, let's see, is it two? Yeah, Ernest Holmes. Some imaginary relationship that Ernest might have spoken with and had a conversation with. I chose Emerson. And what I did was I took actual words of Emerson and what I would imagine Ernest and the relationship and their conversation back and forth to each other. And never got into the magazine, but this book was put together because there were lots of people that wrote, the different people, conversations with different people. I don't know who, but mine was Emerson. So, and I also wrote one, which was probably actual conversations between my husband, Richard, and Ernest. Because he drove Ernest to different places. He'd take him down to Tijuana, which he loved to do. And then he would drive him to Asilmar and help them move from their house on 6th and it was about Wilton, I think, into the house on Lorraine, 6th and Lorraine. So that was his experience. About the last 3 years of his life is what Richard experienced, Ernest. So I'm going to stop there. I've just been rattling on. I don't know what else you'd like me to talk about.
Well, I love everything you shared. Thank you so much. I would like to hear, who were your main teachers when you were studying Science of Mind? Who were your main teachers and practitioner and then as a ministerial?
I remember that my teacher, they had lecture. You took 30 weeks of for each, Science of Mind 1 was 30 weeks, Science of Mind 2, practitioner 1, 2. There's also a consciousness course, which was another 30 weeks. And they were lectures. And I've been trying to remember what that man's name was. After some years later, he became the minister at the Oklahoma City church. And I'm sorry, I just don't remember his name. Dr. Bob Hart, no. Is it Bill Hart? He was a Beverly Hills church minister. He was one of the teachers. That was the time that Harry Moses was in that church too. Harry Morgan Moses.
So which church were you taking your studies at?
Los Angeles.
Founders?
That would have been Founders.
Founders.
Yeah, Founders. Yeah, Founders Church. And I took classes, I think years later at Founders. I took classes from Robert Bitzer years later when I was there in Los Angeles during the week, and then go home during the weekends. I would took classes from Robert Bitzer, who was in Hollywood. I would go up to his church and take a class like a Wednesday night or some classes. I was always taking classes. I was with Gene Emmett Clark. I lived in Santa Monica and I wasn't affiliated with any church. And I just started going to his church, he and Jean Boutzer. By the way, she's the one that gave me her robe. She was assistant minister to Bob Scott when they were in North Hollywood, when he was in North Hollywood. And then she married Gene Emmett Clark, and then they disaffiliated by request. I'll just say that much about it. And then they started their own church in Santa Monica, which did quite well, I think. I attended that because I lived in Santa Monica.
So how did Science of Mind change your life?
I can't say that it, well,
Or was
I,
it
w-
like,
I wouldn't normally say that it did change my life. However, evidently I had enough in my, enough, not from formal training, but just enough in me from being with my dad, being with Ernest and Hazel. It just that when I found myself in predicaments, which were many, I knew how to get out of it. And in everything always turned out right. No matter how awful it seemed to be, it all came out okay.
nice?
So, and I went through a lot of stuff over lifetime. Had some real health challenges after Richard passed on. I took into my my consciousness what I had heard many years ago about certain length of time that, when you lose a loved one, that's when you get sick. Well, sure enough, right to the date, practically, it that started it. And so I didn't learn from the first time, didn't learn from the second time, but by the third time was different, show up differently. And anyway, I think I'm on the right path now. Finally, at 88, I should be on the right path. I've always said I'm a slow learner. I guess I am.
Oh, you're amazing. So what are your current spiritual practices?
Well, as a practice, I won't say 100%, but 99.5% of every morning of the days, every morning I come upstairs because that's where my living room is, and I read what we believe, what I believe. I read from something that I'm reading throughout the year. Now, I've done different things. I've done the Science of Mind in 365 Days by Edward Balloon. I've done that one year. I did Voice Celestial. Right now I am doing, and I did 365 Science of Mind that Kathy Julene put together. Right now, this year, I am doing 365 Richer Living, I think is the name of it, Barker and Holmes.
Yeah.
So that one for this year. Then besides that, then if there's another book that I want to read, like I've been taking a class with Dr. Roger Teal, and we've been reviewing, going through studying his book, This Life is Joy. And that's wonderful. And we're almost complete with that. So that's been a daily practice. And then I always have stacks of books that, I've got to read that. I've got to read that. Somebody mentions a book. I've got to read that. So I get lost. It just, I don't know. So, and now I'm taking a class, which is once a month with Dr. Lloyd Tupper.
Oh, fun.
And we are going through what we believe. And each month he discusses the two of the I believes. So this last week we did the first two, and so it'll be 6 month class, but it's only once a month. And the group is called Reflections, and he's a wonderful teacher. So I just I encourage people, if they ever have the opportunity to hear him or be with him, that they do that. I was very honored from this a year ago by International New Thought Alliance of receiving that beautiful award. If you want me to show it to you, I will.
I was going to say, if you have it nearby, it's real pretty. I think folks would like to see it.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll step aside then if you want to pause, and I'll get a couple of different ones that I got.
There you go. We'd love to see them.
All right. Well, this is the one by INTA, and this is wood. No, I don't know that it's wood, but it's beautiful. It looks like cherry wood, and this is metal. And what was it? Well, like, what is it called?
What was it called?
Torchbearer of New Thought Award. I better put my glasses on so I want to really see it. Here. I feel like I'm bragging now, but I just this really moves me when I receive things like this. For championing the principles and causes of new thought in our culture, INTA 107th Annual World Congress, One Mind as Many. And that was in Chicago in 2022. And let's see. This is gorgeous. And that is from United Center Spiritual Living, Loving Gratitude for 25 years of service.
Wow.
It doesn't say the year it was given to me, but it was quite a few years ago, I guess. And this one is Global Heart Award, Reverend Dr. Marilyn Leo, United Clergy. That one's very beautiful too.
Yeah, that's real pretty.
And one more.
Yes.
Oh, this is from Alita and Jose Sosa and their group in Monterrey, Mexico. And I went down there. They have a wonderful group. And none of these have the date on them. So, oh yes, it does. February 20th, 2001. So I was very, very moved by that one too.
Very nice.
Alita she translated my book into Spanish, and she's no longer with us on the planet. So those are wonderful.
And you also, didn't you receive the Living Treasure Award?
Yes, that is a tall flower vase, really. Wow. I don't have it here with me. It's in another place.
Nice. Yes.
And it is not inscribed. It just, I'd never know that unless I told you.
I'm glad you
did. I did keep it. Yeah. I probably should put it on a piece of paper and put it inside so that my daughter would know what it was for. Okay.
Oh, thank you. You've done so much for our movement. And I know, again, these awards, people don't, to receive them just is gratitude. The movement's grateful for all you've done.
These are they're really beautiful. And, I never think about, when Tim Stewart, he was the president of INTA, when he gave this told me they were going to give this to me, I said, what for? But now that we've been reviewing, I just didn't realize the different things that I've been busy for the last 80 years.
Yes, you have.
But yeah, time flies by and it's been fun. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more.
Yes. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I am working on another book and just barely starting on it, but and I hope that it's enjoyable too. I try to write so it's enjoyable, not just. I know that Chronicles may have been boring to people that didn't know what it was really about, but my other books, I think, are more conversational and I hope are enjoyable to people.
Well, yeah, they're stories, and people like to hear stories. Well, and you just
Yes.
recently did the daily guides in January of 2023 for Science of Mind magazine, and boy, were they a hit. I mean, just people were just reposting them all over the place. They were
Oh,
really engaging. You brought stories in and great quotes, and you made sure it tracked with things going on in the world, and like the season for peace and nonviolence, and Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday and Ernest Holmes' birthday, and they were just really lovely.
well, I'm glad you enjoyed them. And I have not been asked to do them for next year, but I'm kind of hoping that I get to do them again. Although at the time I thought, oh my God, this is so much work. I never want to do it again. But yes, I would be honored to do them again. So,
Nice. So what impact do you believe religious science and science of mind is having on the world?
well, I've thought for many, many years, since the 50s and 60s, I can see science mind principles being taught to people. When at one time, for a couple of years, I worked for what they called Kelly services, which are temporary workers. And I worked as a temporary, but then I was invited to come and work in the office. And they had a sales program for the people that worked in the office. And so I attended that sales program, and all I heard was science mind being taught, and then all the visioning by athletes, and visioning of what it is they expect to where that ball is going to go. There's just so much that people don't realize. The science of mind is part of their lives, and they don't realize. I hear it on news broadcasters. I hear the same things, and so I find it's been going on for a lot of years, and without our name attached. So it's we're influential whether we know it or not.
Absolutely. What do you see the future of science of mind and new thought?
Well, I think it's going to be more of the same. I'm not sure about formal organizations. I don't know what's going to happen about formal organizations. I have no way of knowing that. I hope that I don't know. As long as the teaching is getting out there around the world, which it is, because we have grown so much around the world. And when we used to meet in Bob and Barbara's apartment in San Diego before they moved to Idaho, although they already had the house up there, but their main place was in San Diego. That was a wonderful experience, and as I saw, they had a very large living room, and it was full of people representing different countries and different languages. And that's where Pat Watson from Nova Scotia, she was part of that. I'm trying to remember who else, but there were a lot, and Bob attended that. Of course, it was his house and or his apartment. And so but he was interested in the Russian side, and Spanish seemed to be more closer related to us because we have so many Spanish speaking people in the United States. And we have the Science of Mind textbook in Spanish, or it was coming out, or maybe it was a little after that. Now I understand they redone that again, I think.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, in process or something.
Yeah, it's out.
But at any rate, when it was time for me to move on to other things, because that was one of the things with Richard. We were both of the same mind. We didn't stay with projects very long. We were project-oriented people. and you have a project, you get it over with, and then you move on to something else. I'm amazed I'm still with the archives after 20 some years.
I was going to say,
Just
you've kind of hung in there here at the archives pretty good.
Well, the other group that I've stayed with since, let's see, I don't know when that was, around the same length of time or more, was the Heffernan Foundation, with Marion Heffernan invited me to be the secretary of the corporation. I was astounded, I did, and it didn't become active for 10 more years, and it's a very big job, but I love it. I really, I don't know, I enjoy being able to help people in that capacity and giving them money. And I think most of them have gone on to be ministers. I don't like to, certain words come into my mind. I think that doesn't sound very nice, so I won't say them. but we've had a lot of given a lot of grants and scholarships to people who are doing great work. So very happy about that.
Heffernan Foundation's been around for quite a while, and like you said, giving money to just expand the teachings of science of mind.
Well, we our first she must have landed in 97, because I think we became active well, I can tell you this in a minute. Our first meeting was, I think, 2004, either 2004 or 2007, and we've been active since then. So that's however long that is.
Oh, wow.
20 years.
Yep. No, that's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I do call you the Energizer Bunny, because you do. You're going to another meeting. You have a committee. You're doing things for Heffernan, for the archives, and by the way, anyone out there, she's retired from the archives board and board of governors. That means she could just kind of show up to like every meeting, and still share wisdom.
If you saw my calendar, though, you would know that, in fact, I just threw away the March calendar. You would know that from the very beginning of my, quote, retirement was, how'd I ever have time to work? I had a regular job, but I didn't get tired like I do now. I do get tired. And so I can be on, I've been on working now from 8 o'clock this morning, and it's now 2:45. So when we're finished, then I will be finished for the day, and I will just, what do they call it, vegging out or something like that. And I just have my iced tea and that. But I have enjoyed this talk and this conversation, and I hope that I remembered everything that you're interested in learning about.
I have two more questions when you're ready. Go for it. Yeah.
Every other month now, I am in the Science of Mind magazine, all last year and then this year too. And so I wonder about if people are enjoying them, because the people I hear from that say they love them are my friends or people I know, So I think I did get one letter from somebody in the Midwest.
Oh, nice.
And that was very moving. Yeah, that was very nice.
That's wonderful.
And that makes me feel good when it's somebody other than just friends. I mean, I love hearing from my friends. It's very helpful for the ego to tell me that they're enjoying something that I've done. It's very nice. But I would like to hear from other people too, that I don't know.
Well, we will put that out there, and people can let you know. Yeah, it is. It's amazing. I mean, it's interesting. I think with Science Mike, especially the magazine, it has such a far reach. The lives that are being touched. And we just don't know. We just don't know. And I know
Right.
you've shared a lot of your personal stories in the magazine too. And I know that they have touched lives too. They've been very inspirational when we share from a vulnerable place.
Well, I hope so. We probably all experienced similar occasions in our lives, you know. Um, there was a time when I was in Lancaster. I did many, many things in Lancaster. I guess I've always been like this, starting up groups and things. And I knew a woman who ran the let's see, what was the nonprofit you worked for?
It was Peaceworks Inc. It was Mountain Peace Shelter.
Yeah, the shelter.
Mhm.
Okay, so we had one at Lancaster, and I met the woman who was running it, and I worked for her for a while, unpaid. All my jobs are unpaid, and no cash. That they're paid in other ways, but
Right.
no cash. And so I worked with that, and I gave a self-esteem class,
Nice.
and that was interesting time also. I also, while I was in Lancaster, I went to the community college, and I thought, well, if I do it long enough, that 20 years or so, I might get a degree. So hard work. How they got me to be an honor student, I don't know, because I didn't understand any of the math that I was supposed to know. It's kind of interesting, but I don't know. Things are just different today than they were when I went to school. I never learned anything beyond my multiplication tables, and that was hard for me to learn, but I did pretty good.
Well, you
So,
definitely seem like a lifelong learner. I mean, I think that it's like
um,
it's that's beyond.
perennial student.
Yeah.
Perennial. That's okay with me.
Nice.
I think I'll be learning all the time. That's my opinion. That the curiosity of learning, and how things work or why they work. Or I had a wonderful conversation with someone this morning about different things about science of mind, and that come up, and I just love those conversations. Well, what do you think about such and such? And we were talking about I don't remember now what it was, but it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I hope to be able to do something at the SOAR meeting and at a SOMAR this year. I'm hoping to be able to do something there,
Nice.
and just have conversations with people there in the audience, and answer questions, but that are my philosophy or my what I think about things.
I
And
love
of course, they're based on what I've learned from Ernest Holmes. So I never know whether they're my philosophy or Ernest Holmes, then I'm just remembering that I don't know. So, but I'll take credit for where credit's due.
it. Well, deeply we are one, right? So it's all that one mind. So I think you're safe. It's good.
We just
So,
have different ways of
well,
expressing the one.
exactly, your unique individualized way of being you and how you synthesized it in your life
Mhm.
and what makes sense, what you've learned. Yeah. So what words of wisdom would you like to ensure are recorded as the legacy you leave in the world?
Stay curious, open to learning, listening to other people, and most important, to yourself. Listen to what that inner voice tells you, guide you. It'll guide you if you just pay attention. And if that voice says no and you go ahead and do it, well, sorry you did that, because you probably would have been better off to listen and do what it suggested. But at any rate, yeah, just listen, pay attention to that inner voice within you, and have confidence. That's been one of my weaknesses, is the confidence part. But anyway, that's another story of how or why that came about. But this has been an interesting experience, and I love it. And I guess I like to talk more than I thought I did. I say, I don't have anything to say. But I've been going, talking nonstop here.
You have lots of wisdom, and that's why, again, I would hear all your stories and play, and I'm like, no, we need to record this. This is really important. You've done so much, and to capture it is for our movement. So we really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you would like to share? I think that's just, I love that question. Is there anything else in your heart that you would like to share?
Well, I would just say, be true to yourself, have confidence in yourself, listen to yourself, and listen to others, and take in what you think is true for you and ignore the rest of it. Don't take in stuff just because it came in your ears. Doesn't mean it has to stay in your heart.
I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Interesting.
It is.
Okay, well, I really have appreciated this time with you, Kathy, and
Thank you.
so,
Thank you so much. Thank you for all you've done. Thank you for helping us capture this so others can hear your story from you and learn and be inspired. And we're grateful. So on behalf of the Science Mind Archives and Library Foundation, which is you, but that's okay, I can say it. We're grateful for you in this Wise Sage interview. Thank you so much.
thank you, Kathy. Hello, I'm Marilyn Leo, founder of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. I hope you have enjoyed this wonderful interview with this very special wise sage person. They've been around for quite a while. If you value these interviews, we invite you to show your generosity by making a donation or joining as a member of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. Thank you for watching.